Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Magic and Miracles podcast. Today, we are here with Adrienne. And Adrienne, let's start right off the bat. What is your moment of magic and miracles?
The moment that I realized just how much my energetic body needed closure in order for my son to come in. I had been on a very long fertility journey to get him. A lot of my work actually was birthed from my journey to conceive my son. And I was one of those people that had that kiss of death, unexplained secondary infertility diagnosis. So, like, your test results look fine, but we're not quite sure why you're having this issue. So, I went to this retreat, and one of the exercises at this retreat is if it was the last day of your life, what would you say to fill in the blank? Your partner, yourself, your children, whoever you wanted to share this message with. And it was probably one of the most potent exercises I had ever done. I cried through the entire thing because I had really never thought about, like, if I'm on my deathbed, um, what would I say? And a lot of that exercise made me realize all of the things that I was holding in my nervous system that I didn't allow myself to really feel and process. And I can feel myself getting emotional as I say it, that I had just kind of numbed out and turned off to be in survival mode, and allowing myself to really grieve some things and share some things and speak from my heart in this exercise. I did end up sharing this letter with my husband later. I debated for a long time whether I was going to do it or not. And after 8 years of trying for my son, literally that next ovulation period after I did that exercise, my little spirit baby came in, and it truly was magic. I needed to create the space in my system for him to arrive. And at the time of this recording, he's now a beautiful 19-month-old, vibrant, charismatic, now starting to see personality little dude. And I'm so grateful for him. But yeah, that was really the magic. Conception isn't something that we can control. Conception is magic in and of itself. And we just have to create space for it.
Absolutely. And if you don't mind, if you don't want to answer this question, that's totally fine. But if you don't mind me asking, what were the things that you kind of released from your energetic body and from your nervous system? Like, what were you hanging on to so hard that
Mm.
that was not spacious, or did not create the space for you to have him already?
I think some of it was control, quite frankly,
Mm.
because I couldn't find answers. I started becoming very educated in this particular field. I've been able to help other people, and I couldn't turn off the part of my brain that knew where I was in my cycle at all times. And I had been doing the basal temp tracking and the luteinizing hormone tracking and all of those things for so long that it was like I was trying to white knuckle and death grip my way through the conception process because I was thinking about it far too literally and less energetically. And spirit babies need space to come in, and sometimes they need us to resolve certain themes too in order to be like, okay, that loop is complete and now it's my time. And I think the other piece of it, not only was I trying to over control the process, but the other part was really that I felt like I lost my voice through the process because I had tried going through the traditional Western model, and that is where a lot of the tracking began. But you get moved from procedure to procedure and test to test and all of those kinds of things, and you kind of feel like you become a number and lose some of your autonomy. And some of it, in my system didn't really feel aligned, but at the same time, like I so desperately wanted to have this baby, as so many of us do when we're on this journey. And so I just went with it, and losing my voice in that process and advocating for the things that I needed. And, even timed intercourse, trying to, make sure that this is happening during ovulation. Like, I wasn't advocating for what I needed with my partner. We were losing our relationship in pursuit of this goal that we both had, because he wanted it just as much as I did. And so writing this letter to my husband gave me a voice again. I was able to express things that I had been feeling that I didn't feel like I could express, because we both were emotionally exhausted at that point. We were almost 8 years into our journey. And yeah, I gave birth 8 years after we started trying. So I was 7 years into our journey. And, he just, God love him, he had that little engine that could kind of mentality. Well, it didn't work this month. We're just gonna keep trying, and I love that he never like wanted to throw in the towel, but sometimes that made me feel like I was under a lot of pressure to perform, and wasn't able to just kind of sit back and allow. So, all of it was a culmination of all of those things, and being able to express my thoughts in this letter created that space. It's like it emptied out my system with all of those things that I had been carrying, and helped me heal my heart in ways that I didn't realize that I needed.
Wow. So you didn't even do like a physical release process, if I understand it correctly. It was the letter that was just like done. I'm releasing everything in this letter and that's it.
Well, I've been sitting, so because of the style of the event that I was at, we had been in a meditative state for quite a while. Like, yes, there was like ceremony that was happening around it. But it was very much being in more of a meditative state. But yeah, I think for me, writing has always been very cathartic, and it's helped me process my thoughts. And in this particular setting, it was more like intuitive writing than it was like me actually thinking my way through it. And I was kind of surprised by some of what came out, which I also believe is a big part of why it was as helpful as it was. Um, but the physical act of writing helps my system to process things. It always has.
That's amazing. And the retreat, was it about fertility even, or did it have nothing to do with fertility?
It
Yeah.
had nothing to do with fertility. It actually had to do with death and letting go of what no longer serves you, and that there's actually a lot of energy in that death and rebirthing process, that things have to fall away in order for new things to come in. So thematically, like, it was actually more about death.
Well, the person who is not the mother yet, she has died in that sense, right? So
Yeah.
the mother could be birthed. So this is
Yes.
quite beautiful and quite amazing. I love hearing stories from retreats. I've had another girl on here. She also talked about how a retreat that was about money and finances helped her heal her endometriosis. So
Mm.
retreats can be incredibly powerful. So to anyone who wants to have magic and miracles and who doesn't want to give up, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that checking in with their nervous system is really the first step. So, knowing where your baseline is for the day, you can advocate for yourself. You can make decisions from an embodied place because a lot of times we tend to prioritize this thing that sits on our shoulders and think that our big, beautiful brain is going to solve all of the things. And for a lot of women, it's a safety mechanism, it's a coping mechanism that we exercise to keep ourselves safe. And when it comes to the allowing of magic and miracles, you actually have to be more of an empty, open vessel in order for those things to pour in. So I think the biggest thing that I have learned and I have really made a part of my daily practice is starting my day with just 5 minutes of asking my system, like, how do I feel today? Because then you can decide, do I feel great? Do I feel like I could bounce out of bed today? Awesome. This is the kind of day I could work a little extra. I could take on more things. Maybe I could go out with friends. And I'm not overspending the bank account energetically, right? Like I'm not creating a deficit. I'm meeting myself where I actually am today. And because women are cyclical beings, when we're in our luteal phase, we don't feel like being as externally focused. That is okay. That is normal. That is a natural part of the energy. So when you take that quick inventory in the morning and you really sit with yourself and say, so how do I feel in my vessel today? Um, you're able to make decisions like this is not a day where I have extra to give. How can I ask for help today? Things like that, because then you're maintaining more of an equilibrium because this need to control and manage our environment tends to creep in more when we're feeling weaker, simply because control keeps us safe.
Where do you think women get this from? Because I know a lot of women, I speak to a lot of women who always have an issue with control. In your mind, in your idea right now, what is it that you're channeling? Like, where does the freaking control come from? Like, why do we always want to control things?
Oh, there's so many reasons. Some of it comes from social conditioning and the fact that bleeding bodies are that run on infradian rhythm, which means that our hormone cycle is longer than a 24-hour cycle, right? Bleeding bodies have their cycle renew itself every 28 to 30 days, if roughly. So men's bodies move on the day night cycle, so it's a 24-hour cadence for their hormones. So we wake up feeling different every single day, and when we are overworked, our nervous system feels like we're being chased by a tiger. When we are underfed, our body fears famine and creates a stress signal. So there are a lot of things. Trying to overextend during different phases of our cycle tends to be one of the most common reasons that we get closer to burnout faster. So the depletion of energy is a component of that, because if we keep ourselves safe, then we will continue to thrive, or at least this is what our nervous system thinks. Well, the the problem is trying to control overextends our nervous system and all of these kinds of things. So we we're saturated, a lot of us. I would say that women that find themselves 35 and older tend to probably feel this more deeply, that, we were very much pushed to go to college and to have a career and to achieve the thing and to go to school because our mothers couldn't, because financial aid had changed, how we were orienting around careers had changed. There ended up being this stigma about going to college to get your MRS degree, i.e., find a husband and get married. So because that was kind of baked into our upbringing, a lot of us feel like we have to prove something. And then being in a workforce that isn't wired for or really understands the physicality of being a female. You've got a couple of things that are kind of all happening at the same time that lead to overwork and burnout. So a lot of us try to control our environment so that we feel safe because everything else in our environment feels like an attack, whether we realize it in capital letters or not. I have some women that come into my practice and they're like, "Oh, I'm not stressed." And then they start talking about being overscheduled and how long their work days are and how stressful their workouts are and all of those kinds of things. And I'm like, "Sweetheart, it's because your body is stuck in fight or flight. Your body has adapted to think that this is baseline normal, and it actually, your system is in overdrive. You're pulling way too much energy on your body's batteries." um so I really do feel like women seek to control because their nervous system is trying to calm down. And sometimes we have partners that can hold the appropriate space to help us to feel safe. Other times we're in partnerships where, there's tons of memes out there where people joke about, "Oh, I have 4 kids. I gave birth to 3 of them and I'm married to one." Like, oh, there's lots of jokes like that. And the sad reality is your partner is supposed to be part of that making your nervous system feel safe equation. And when they don't, it catapults you further into control because you don't feel like you can lean on them. So there's lots of things I think that the modern woman is facing, the mental overwork and not feeling like they can share the load with a partner, the way that careers are oriented, the fact that women are expected to work like little men as if their hormones function on a 24-hour cycle and not a 28-day cycle. All of those things compound the social expectations around, well, if you're going to prove that you can do everything that a man can do, you have to work like him too. I don't know, but women are totally hardwired for multitasking in a much more sophisticated way than men are. Just think about hunter-gatherer. We had to make sure that the children that we had didn't get eaten by other things. We were constantly multitasking, gathering the berries and making sure the kids are safe, right? So we can do all the things that men can do. We just need to do it differently and honor our infradian rhythm. And the world isn't built like that. It's just like the world is built for right-handed people and extroverts. And then everybody else has to cope, right? So I really do feel like there is a very layered set of reasons why women feel like they need to hold this level of hypervigilance. And, in partnerships, it's a renegotiation of how I'm going to show up, what feels good to me in terms of this partnership. I have these conversations with my husband all the time, and we had one this morning actually, which is kind of funny. It's a timely conversation, but I find myself sitting at 42, which In traditional Chinese medicine, your body changes in 7-year cycles. I'm sitting at the early stages of my perimenopausal transition. I can already feel that things are shifting inside of me. And so I'm advocating for what I need with him. This is what makes me feel safe. This is what makes me feel seen. I feel uncomfortable with the fact that there are things changing inside of my system right now. It would feel good if. And I try to create expectations because really, at the end of the day, if our partner really loves us, they just want to show up in a way that feels good to you. So when it comes to control, if you feel the need to control, I often invite my clients to get curious about where it's coming from. Is this like, are you suffering from oldest daughter syndrome, which I'm totally one of those, where like you had a certain level of expectation and responsibility being the oldest and the daughter. Are you still carrying that forward into your current relationships? Is this coming from your feelings of safety in your relationship? Is it coming from the pressures that you're getting outside of your household? Where are these things coming from? And then when you allow yourself to get curious about it, often I'll ask my clients, do you have fights with people about the dishwasher? How people load the dishwasher. And if the answer is yes, then there are aspects around control to just, I invite you to take a look at.
Yes, I would second that. Okay, amazing. So you started earlier telling us about a little bit about your work and how you've also helped women with fertility before. But walk us, what is it that you do now, also with your new gained experience, right? So what is it that you do? Who is Adrienne?
So, hi, I'm Adrienne Irizarry. I am a cycle alchemist and East Asian medicine practitioner. I work with women in all of the seasons and cycles of their life to help them essentially live their most vibrant lives. A lot of times, women complain about period cramps, irregular cycles, as we move into perimenopause, hot flashes, night sweats, mood swings, all of these kinds of things. And our hormones express themselves based on inputs, right? What we're nourishing ourselves with, the stories we tell ourselves in our head, the way that we're able to express ourselves, because a lot of us, that whole good girl image, we're expected to be seen and not heard. If we truly express what is authentically real for us, we get labels like being brash or being a bitch instead of, wow, she's being confident or she's just sharing her truth. So cycle alchemy is all about looking at where your roadblocks are that are creating symptomology in your system. So, cramps and clots often have an energetic and emotional component to them. Um, Cycle irregularity, fertility challenges, all of those kinds of things. Because of where we are hormonally in our lives, we can sweep some of that stuff onto the rug. We start seeing a little bit more of it on the fertility journey, if we're not expressing our truth and giving ourselves rest and things of that nature. But if we've swept all of this under the rug for the good of the people and to keep everybody else around us comfortable, by the time we get to perimenopause, your hormones literally do not allow you to do that anymore. So this is where you can't help but speak your truth. And if you haven't been doing it, that's where hot flashes, these big explosive expressions of emotion come from, because it's years and years and years of this stuff bottling up in your system. So I work with wherever women are in their seasons and cycles of their life and help them to live symptom free through exploring where the root of these symptoms are coming from in the first place.
I love that also because I do very similar work. It's getting very into emotions and
Mm-hmm.
physical symptoms, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how did you get into the Eastern Asian medicine aspect of it? Are you into Chinese medicine, or what is it that you have studied there?
So, how did I get into it? I had a horrible postpartum recovery with my first child. And I had done all of the things that Western medicine told me would make the bleeding stop. So when I stopped nursing, I started bleeding and I just didn't stop. And we had tried the pill, the IUD, all the things. And I still kept bleeding. And acupuncture was the first and only thing that in several sessions resolved it. I took disgusting tasting herbs and did acupuncture. But in like 6 acupuncture sessions, the bleeding stopped for the first time in 6 months. And I was like, what is this magic? And I must know all of the things. And I had an incredible acupuncturist who indulged my myriad of questions. She brought books in from her personal library to nourish my hunger and curiosity. I would read the book. I would bring it back to her at the next appointment. She's like, you've pretty much read everything that I read when I was going through school. And I was like, awesome. What else can I read? Like, I just loved it and it made so much sense to me. And I pursued a Chinese nutritional therapy diploma because I really loved it. I wasn't totally sure if I wanted to go to acupuncture school or not. I came to the realization that I just don't have the heart to stick needles in people. I just couldn't do it. I love everything about it. I I personally receive acupuncture care. I totally respect it. I just could not stick people with needles. So my toolkit expanded to herbalism. I am trained in Chinese, Ayurvedic, and Western Materia Medica. So I pull herbs into my work. I'm a certified pelvic steaming professional and an acutonic certified acutonics practitioner. So I use forks the way that an acupuncturist would use needles, so it's non-invasive. That part I can handle, and I like to use frequency in a lot of ways in my practice. Um, so those are all the tools that I use now, and I came to them through my own lived experience, and then decided to make it into like a formal big girl job. And offer it to others when I was struggling to get pregnant with my son. I had remarried the love of my life. We wanted to have a baby of our own. 3 miscarriages in, we realized, wow, this is not exactly what we expected this journey to look like since you have kids and I have had one, and we never expected to encounter this challenge. And so my journey became the origin story of my practice, and it expanded far beyond fertility. Like fertility was my focus at that point, but I'm definitely seeing far more 35 and olders these days going, so my cycle is weird and I'm feeling weird. And I don't like this. And the only option that the doctor has given me is the pill. Like, I don't know how I feel about that. So, um, so East Asian medicine always had answers whenever I would go to the traditional model, and I was offered hormones and surgery, and that's all that I was offered for cycle problems. And, I was put on the pill at 14 because I had endometriosis and I had a heart attack on said birth control at 25 and said, I need to find another way. So my life story is really like the culmination of I have walked the road that so many of the women that come into my practice have walked between adverse symptoms on medications and, not really being offered any other solutions other than hormones and surgery. And I offer them essentially the intersection of everything that they couldn't find.
This is so important because I feel like so many women do have the journey of going to the doctor and only getting pill or surgery as an option for so many things, which
Hmm.
there should be so many other alternatives. It's wild. I feel like now that I've interviewed so many people, I know of many more alternatives than a doctor would know, simply
Yep.
because I talk to people who have healed themselves and who have gone that route and who
Hmm.
have decided no, this is my story isn't going to be the pill and surgery. My story is going to be healing. My story is going to be remission or just feeling better, but not that. So
Hmm.
I love that you mentioned this, and I love the work that you do. So thank you so much for coming on this podcast and for your time and wisdom and knowledge. And tell people now, where can they find you?
Absolutely. So my practice is called Moon Essence. You can find me at moonessence.life. I am active on Substack and Instagram and Facebook at Moon Essence Me. So, get to know me a little bit. I have a podcast called Reproductive Rebel, and I love being able to let women know that they have options outside of hormones and surgery. And I'm here for any kinds of questions and for people who are really ready to take their work beyond what is traditionally offered, because I work in all of those places and spaces outside of it.
I love it. Thank you so much, Adrienne. And thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.